This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I am so proud and so honoured to be welcoming to our global community today somebody who I've had the absolute privilege and honour to get to know over the last 3 years. And I'm hoping that he will be no surprise to any of you, but I'm going to let him introduce himself. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Amar Chohan. Have I said that right? In the Punjabi way?
Hello, you did.
Hey!
Yeah, Chohan.
There you go. I want to be authentic with it. And he is the co-founder of Hoxo Media. And for anyone who's been following our pod since we started in 2020, we had the absolute honour of being sponsored by the guys at Hoxo Media for 2 years. So we will always have a special place in our heart. But for those who are not, for some reason, familiar with who you are and what you do, please introduce your business and what you do.
Thank you. And we love you as well, Leisha. We've loved sponsoring the podcast. It's been awesome over the years. Who am I? So I'm Amar. I'm co-founder of Hoxo. We are now entering our 6th year in the recruitment branding space, and we've been on an awesome journey over that period of time. We've done all sorts, but I think right now we're really, really clear in terms of the things that we're doing. We're supporting businesses across the globe around personal branding and company branding. So all things branding, we're doing some really, really awesome things, and I think now more than ever, it's a period that businesses are really starting to take on board, and it's awesome. Yeah, we're having a really good time doing it as well.
And that's, and just to kind of contextualize how I got to know you guys so brilliantly, I actually did the Personal Branding Academy in the
You did? You were brilliant. You were great.
In the height of the pandemic. God, you look back now and think we were all a bit like, oh my God, what are we doing? And I knew that I was probably doing about 50% of contribution because I was always happy to share content, but I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a scoop is what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I always say to anybody that asks me about, the why and how I did the Branding Academy was because I knew I needed a strategy, and that's what it gives you.
But you know what? I think that's such an important point that you made. Like I literally just got off the phone to a girl in Australia now prior to shooting this, and I think there's 2 reasons why people are not focusing on their brand, myself included, and they tend to be fear, number one, right? Me and you having this conversation is pretty safe. For whatever reason you don't enjoy what we're talking about, I can put the phone down, I can dust myself off, my ego might get a little bit of a bashing, but I can get back onto the other call in a pretty safe place. Whereas putting yourself online, 10,000 people may see that, 3,000 may not agree with that. And there's a genuine gut-wrenching fear that's attached to that. And I see that across a lot of customers that I speak to. And then the other aspect tends to be structure, framework, know what to do. Like if I take you for when, I remember when we spoke and you were doing bits, right? You were pushing your content out there. So there wasn't a fear attached to it because you were ambitious enough to kind of push yourself out there. But it was a little bit all over the place that, you didn't know, you didn't really understand, what you were doing for, why you were doing it. And I think by working together and adding that structure, you've been awesome, and you flew, haven't you, ever since? So
I did. And I think I'm really pleased that's our starting point, because I think, you do get 2 kinds of people online anyway. You get those who observe, who tend to not share, who are perfunctory and see that they should be on there. And then you get those like me who some would say overshare. But actually I can choose what I want to share, because obviously it's me and it's about Leisha and it's about key recruitment and it's about the podcast, whatever it might be. And I think, there's a lot of sort of speculation, I guess, about this sort of authenticity and what the personal brand even mean. And for me, I think that's where, and I want to come on to how we curate this, just forget the rhetoric for a minute. This is about you being able to, on a mass level, speak to your ideal customer. And that's, for me, what the strategy gave me, that I knew I was happy to do it. I mean, I'm never short of content ideas, because I've been doing recruitment 25 years. I'm nearly 50. If I haven't got some experience that I can share or get an opinion off someone. And I do think, that there are more people that are happy to sort of put the fear to one side, but it's got to have a substance to it. And I think that's where having the strategy allows you to see what the why is about why you're doing it and making it more meaningful. So,
but you hit the point then around authenticity, though. I think that is, again, a really true point. The amount of people I talk to and they go, you know what, I don't want to overshare. I don't want to put loads of personal content about my dog and my house move or my holiday or holiday pictures. I don't want to do that because everyone on LinkedIn's doing it. One, that's false. That's just your echo chamber in terms of people who you're seeing on the platform. And two, that's authentic to them, right? So it's it has to be what you're comfortable with when it comes to sharing content, I think, on LinkedIn. I think you do a wicked job at it as well.
Yeah, I mean, my advice is always to anyone, whether it's introducing them to you as a potential, customer for Hoxo Media, or just genuinely asking for feedback, or they're asking for my opinion, is you've just got to imagine you were doing a business development call, or you were doing an introduction call to a candidate. What would you say? How would you say it? But that's what you replicate then online. That's all you're doing, but you're doing it to a mass audience, and it's not going to appeal to absolutely everybody. But then are they your target audience? So I just think sometimes don't overthink it.
Yeah, agreed.
Just fucking do it, as they say. So in terms of, I mean, obviously our main audience is on LinkedIn, and I think that's where I can't see that changing for the foreseeable future. And I don't know whether you've got any data to back that up for me, but I mean, what do you think? We've talked about curating content, and what does good actually look like to you now when you see a potential customer, for example, like, we know we can help these guys. What does good look like from a content point of view? I
think stats to back that up. I think the first thing you've got to look at is, when I was in recruitment 6 years ago, LinkedIn in many ways was just a glorified jobs board, and the users, I think it had something like 60 million users at the time.
Right.
That's now gone. This year, I think it will surpass over 1 billion users. So there's more and more and more people who are flocking to the platform, and actually some of the fastest growing areas within that are areas that you wouldn't necessarily associate with LinkedIn. So, for instance, healthcare is an area. I think I did a search the other day. There's something like 10 million doctors now on LinkedIn who are utilizing the platform. Education's another one as well, so teachers. And so the professional services across all realms are really, really flocking to that platform. So I think we don't have a strategy around it, and it isn't a core part of your thinking, then you're missing out, right? Because a big core part of your audience will be on that. So I think that's the first consideration. I think authenticity has to be, a big part of it. I think me replicating you, it gets found out really, really quickly, and that's where you may, you're just doing things for doing sake. And Sean always talks about 4 areas, which I think are bang on, and we talk about this in our academy when we teach it, which is the first part is get your profile right when it comes to LinkedIn. Like, if you think about it, it's your specific landing page. If someone's made the effort to come onto your page, you want to be absolutely crystal clear what you do and what value you might be able to add that individual. And often what we do is we build our LinkedIn profile when we first get into recruitment, and then we do nothing with it. Whereas our journey has changed somewhat over that period of time. So that's, for me, the first part is get that absolutely crystal clear. The second phase for me then is LinkedIn is probably one of the only platforms that you can build a very specific audience. Now, the majority of recruiters, and I probably champion these more than anyone else, is the niche recruiter, right? So if you are in software development and you're working with React, and that's the exact niche that you work with, but having a connection strategy where you can take yourself from 1,000 connections to 10,000 by the end of the year, that is so powerful. Imagine having 10,000 people that you're connected with from an organic perspective. That is massive, right? And then once you've got your connection strategy right, then you want to understand your engagement strategy, right? Because again, you want to have a strategy where you can talk to these individuals in a certain way. And we obviously have our PVC methodology, which is the personal side of it, show your personality, humanize who you are. Then it's the valuable aspect of it. What's actually happening within your target market right now? What conversations are you actually having right now within your target market? And then it's the credibility side, right? The good work that you're doing. What things have you actually done within the last week, the last month within your world? So the engagement strategy is really, really key. Now, I think often people end at that point and they miss the whole point of doing this, right? 2 reasons why I would want to build a brand myself. And they tend to be, reason 1 is around, I just want to have a better way of conversing with people. Right. I don't enjoy cold calling. I don't enjoy speaking to someone who has no idea of who I am, having 15 seconds to do an elevator pitch to keep them on the phone. It's not an enjoyable job. And after a while, you'll burn yourself out. Is that's the only way of working? What I do enjoy is the way I'm conversing with people right now. You know, they might not know exactly what I do, but they know of the brand. They know of who I am. They've been watching me. They've been seeing some value over that period of time. So I enjoy having a warmer conversation with who I'm talking to, more than not. And then finally, I want to make more money from producing content, right? I'm not doing it for doing its sake. I have got no interest in being a LinkedIn influencer and having, X amount of thousand followers. I want to make and convert more money for our business that we can reinvest and then we can grow, right? So they're the two elements. I want to have a better way of being able to converse with people, and I want to be able to convert more conversations. So the fourth principle that we talk about is, once we've got the engagement strategy right, how do you convert? And if you think about it, once you've got people who are looking at what you're doing, who are engaging with what you're doing, who are commenting on what you're doing, like, that is such a warmer introduction route to anything else. I'll give you an example. When I was I saw you at the expo in Birmingham in October, and I put up a post in September, I think. I got married, and the wedding was awesome, and I felt comfortable because it was authentic to me to put up a post about it and share it with my community, right? I was offline for a couple of weeks, so I wanted to put up a post about it and share it with my community. Now, I turned up at the expo. We had a stand at the expo, and whereas a lot of people are going out and they're trying to get customers coming to them all the way through, I reckon I must have had 20 people who I've never spoken to, who I've never known, and they're coming to me saying, "How was the wedding? I saw
congratulations."
that." Congratulations.
I mean, it's just.
But imagine if that's your first interaction, rather than, "Hey, do you want to have 20 minutes to talk? I want to talk to you about personal branding and Hoxo and who we are." And it turns the other way around, and you're turning the sales conversation by doing that. So they're the things, they're the four principles that I think about. If you are looking at LinkedIn and you're thinking about, being serious about building brand and what it can do for you, I think those four areas are the areas that I would look at.
I think there's a first of all, thank you for explaining all that so coherently and concisely, and I think, I do think there's a real disconnect between those who are just going out for followers, because of course followers are powerful now on LinkedIn, because you can have unlimited followers, although you're limited to connections. I have always had my strategy that I would rather have 20,000 followers who are all in recruitment, who will want to buy from me and see me as the go-to, than having 100,000 people where I don't know who they are and I don't care about what they do. So I think it's important to understand what you're, and you listening to this now, you might be sat there thinking, I'm aiming for that 100,000, whatever your target is, but actually you've got to ask yourself why. And I think the ROI is usually the biggest barrier when trying to persuade us, especially for those listening who aren't leaders, we get a lot of newbie recruiters, by the way, Amar. We get a lot, that's our feedback. And I've had offline conversations with them where we talk about branding, and their leaders are very reticent to spend any money. They don't see the value in it, and it's they're trying to plagiarize what they see other people doing. And I always sort of reiterate and say, well, it is in any strategy, in anything that you do where you have a purpose to it and you work hard at it, you will then see the value in it. And for me, over the period of the sort of 2.5 years since I did the academy with you guys, my absolute ROI is that now 50% of my revenue comes purely from LinkedIn, which is significant. At one point, I mean, it started out, I think it was 10 or 15%. So that's a significant amount of money based on my revenue.
But touching on that point, then, like what you're talking about then is like the new guys who are coming into the sector right now. Like, what an advantageous point you can have right now, being a newcomer coming into the sector, where very quickly in a year's time you can build 5,000 connections in your absolute niche spot, and you can start to and you can start to add value to them, in a way that used to take years. In many ways before, right? To be able to build a network, it takes, like, to see people on an individual basis, it take years. I worked in business change for many years. I worked in education for many years. I believe I had a great network, but my God, like it was a one-on-one increase every single time, right? Whereas I've seen some people now, like we've got a girl in the academy who's 2 years in, and I show her as an example often, but she works for a business out in Australia. She's about 2 years into her recruitment career. She's got about 9,000 connections in a very, very niche marketplace, and she's averaging tens of thousands of views of her posts, which are relevant to her market, and she's converting, and she's making, she's billing more than she ever has, and she's billing, far more than some of the senior consultants that are out there right now. Because
and I bet she's billing more than, if you put a clone of her in another company where she was doing traditional business development, building out a network, I bet she's absolutely smashing it compared to the traditional methods. And
you've got to think about the younger community coming in as well.
Absolutely.
Like, they are absolutely, they're glued to a phone. These guys are, they're on social every day. This is the way that they communicate. This is the way that they know. So imagine now a youngster who is so social first coming in, and you're just giving them strategies of, right, here's 100 cold calls, go out and make them. Like, they will want to shortcut the process. They're smart. The millennials now in the world are smart individuals, and they want to find ways of
course, not just the new generation, by the way. Older people like to do it as well.
Yeah, true. You're very true. Yeah.
Sure. Well, Sean himself, he makes the point, doesn't he, in terms of being just much more efficient. If you could sit there and talk to even 5,000 people on a post, it might take you 20 minutes to write or to record. How many phone calls and how many hours would it take to get through to that many decision makers? So I think it's an absolute no-brainer. And I think, we have to, that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I know that you're the expert in what you do. And it's about, if somebody's listening to this now who is in the fledglings of their recruitment career, there are ways that you can do it. You're brilliant at hosting free events, so even if your employer unfortunately isn't prepared to invest, there are still ways that you can elevate yourself. So don't give up on it. And I think it's, there's been some really good learns here. I wanted to talk to you as well, because I think one of the things that is definitely becoming a sort of, I guess, is a dichotomy of those that are being forced back into the workplace and those companies that are embracing the sort of digital nomad hybrid working. And I definitely know where Hoxo Media is. So how have you managed to create a global workforce yourselves that feel connected? I think as an outsider looking in, you do genuinely look like you've got real connectivity, real community internally within Hoxo. How have you managed to do it when you're also dispersed across the globe?
You know what? I think you're absolutely right. And we are fortunate. Like, we have got such a connected team in our business. And I think I think it starts with making the decision we're fully remote. We're a fully remote business. That's the first step. There's no ambiguity around that. We're not part in, we're not part out. We are fully remote. Reason being, pandemic hit. We had a lovely office out in Bethnal Green, and I think I was the only one going in for about the best part of 12 months. And we made the choice that, actually, we're going to shut this down, and we're going to trial remote working. And I think for us, first thing you have to do is you have to make a decision with it, right? Whether it's blended, whether it's fully in the office, whether it's fully remote, the decision needs to be made. It can't be bit part. For a little while we were a bit part, and that ambiguity really rippled through the business. But I think as soon as we started to talk about it the way that we wanted to, then we made it really, really clear. I think the second part is we've got probably half our workforce based out in South Africa. And I think the reason for it has to also make a play. So, for instance, if you are thinking about outsourcing and you are thinking about remote working, I think you have to research around certain elements. Now, South Africa made sense to us because from a time zone perspective, it worked well with us. From a skill set perspective, if I think about digital skills within South Africa, universities out there are great in terms of bringing in new talent within that space. So from a skill set perspective, it worked really, really well for us. And then I think from just every other part, like work ethic and culture fit, etc., as well, worked really, really well for us as well. So I think having some sort of research around talent pools and what that looks like is really, really key. I think technology and tools, again, are another area to think about seriously when you are looking at remote. Like, we've got, I know a lot of businesses use Slack, but we use Google Chat, and our chats they're popping every single day, right? We've got a dedicated people manager who gets around the team. She also is very, very kind of forthcoming when it comes to chat and getting conversation moving as well. I think one of the areas that you've got to be careful about, and it's probably an area that we're really focusing on this quarter, is the collaboration piece, because you can be very siloed in working independently and remotely, and I think you have to kind of force and make time for collaboration more than if you were in the office. So
do you mean booking it actually in as a meeting, as a dedicated
booking actual time, booking meeting times, and as a business accepting that you're not just living in blocks of, you know, client calls and blocks of specific tasks for our individuals. I think you have to accept that some of your time is going to be spent on collaboration, and you might not be able to report for it. It's exactly that. So I think we have, like, for instance, on a every Wednesday we call it coffee o'clock, where anyone can jump in at 3 p.m. and talk about anything, right? You know, any topics, etc., around certain things. We have weekly get-togethers as well, where every Friday we do town halls, etc. So everything that you would normally do in a in-person business, we ensure still happens in a business like ours as well. So I think that's one aspect.
I like the collaboration element, and I think I see that actually that's almost been lost a little bit since we've come back from COVID. Certainly with those businesses that have gone either sort of the blended hybrid / back in the office, it's just we've reverted to type, because that is what human beings do. But if you think about the collaboration that everyone was forced to have to do and being creative, I love that you've kind of taken that and sort of taken it almost to the next level, really. And it clearly works for you. What are the downsides, do you think, of being a fully remote business? Come on, be honest with us.
I mean, I think it's the downside's, I think, fairly obvious, right? You don't get to see your team every single day, and we have an awesome team. Like like the individuals are what makes Hoxo in many ways. So not seeing them weekly to go down the pub or to just, you know, to grab a coffee with or to spend a little bit of time with, that is the
physical
downside. But
but you do see each other. You and Sean do make an effort. You do sort of get together with them, don't you? They get together and stuff.
So what we try to do is we try to do 2 AGMs a year, where in South Africa they're in Cape Town, and then we tend to do either London, or we did one in Sheffield. Sean manages to get us up there, actually.
Obviously.
But we do. We try to twice a year get together in person. And it works right now, but I do think I don't think you can be absolutely rigid with these things either. I don't think you should like have a plan and go like, this is our plan for the next 5 years. I don't think you can. I think you have to continuously sense check. Like, hence when I talk about collaboration, like that is a real thing right now that we feel we have to lean into a little bit, and we have to try to kind of work on. So I think naturally those things will come out. Like, one of the things that we also do that helps us as a business is we do 3 times a year internal CSS scores as well. So we, you know, within that, there's a lot of questions around what the team are actually feeling and thinking about the working situation itself. So, you know, we're honest, we're not going to be able to work on everything, but there's 2-3 things every quarter that we'll give a really good go on. And
you're asking for feedback. You're not just like you say, you're not doing it regardless. And I love the lean in element. I think that's a really important part of your culture, actually. That I think you are very open to that. So I think that's really important. Well, that's been really useful, because there'll be plenty of people that will be listening, because we do have a global audience, which we're really excited about. And we've always got people popping up in new places. So welcome. And you must come and say hi as to where you are listening to the podcast. So before we let you go, you obviously at some point you were a teacher, then you moved into recruitment, and then at some point, whether it was over on a run or at the pub, you and Sean decided to launch your own. Initially, it's going to be a recruitment business, but then it obviously became a recruitment marketing business. So if you could turn the clock back to that point where you were sat there thinking, let's launch on our own, what advice would you give to yourself now of what you've learned over the last 6 years?
I would say, firstly, the point that I'd make on that is I actually wouldn't change anything. I genuinely wouldn't, right? I actually think that, I don't know, I'm a firm believer in life that things are just meant to be, right? And I think from that perspective, you can't lose. You know, if you look at everything as a learning, then you're going to be fine. And actually, I think our business is in a great place today because of absolutely everything that happened beforehand. If I was to think of hindsight and perspective, I'd probably say a couple of things. I'd say, on a personal level, albeit I own a branding agency, personal branding is something that I've actually taken seriously for the first time over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
And it's been transformational, like really has been transformational. I've been consistent, and I got over 1 million views on my own content last year. And it has led for myself to have so many more opportunities, and even like this conversation right now, right? And I think if I started that earlier, that wouldn't have been harmful. That would have been, that would have been great. And who knows where that would be now, but I'm excited to see where that goes. So I think maybe starting that earlier at some point for myself. I think the other thing is, I think with perspective, I'd look at key hires in certain positions. Like if I think, the earlier parts of what we did, Sean had some ridiculous roles even within our own business, right? We were very strategic at times within marketing, but I think as soon as we started to hire some more experienced people in certain roles, it really fast tracked and accelerated our growth in many ways. I won't kind of go into the individuals now, but there are certain individuals that are coming to the business and really added structure and experience and ownership and accountability in certain departments that I think actually, if we did that sooner, then I think we would have kicked on. But again, it's all hindsight. And then finally, I think as a business owner, you have to invest in yourself. And I'm really, really lucky. I've had some awesome mentors in my time since business, and I've got a coach that I work with. Just on an individual level that Sean's spoken to, Aria, for instance. And I think that keeps you sane, and that keeps you accountable, and it keeps you on track.
Definitely.
Often as a young business owner, you only know what you know. And I think
absolutely,
if people can kind of give you a bit more context or a little bit more of an idea of what's in front of you, then I think, and a little bit more clarity within your own mind, I think it gives you that fuller version of yourself. So I think those three things I would look at, but again, the first point still stands. I actually
definitely. No, I love the pragmatism. I have to ask that because, as well as the cohort of people, we tend to get two types of feedback on the podcast: directly messages to me, which I absolutely love, by the way. The first, as I've already mentioned, tends to be those on the starting out on the journey, and then the second is either people that are thinking of setting up on their own, or it is leaders who have appreciated other, like the guest vulnerability or some of the testimonies that they shared. And I think your pragmatism will stand the test of time. I'm like you, even though we create opportunity, I'm a huge believer that what will be will be. And I don't think you should beat yourself up, because if you're not learning from your lessons, then just why are you even here? But I really love the sort of perspective that you've got on, I think having an external coach. I mean, Dr. Ari's actually been on, very kindly Sean introduced me, and he was absolutely, he's insane, isn't he? If anyone isn't following him, he was actually on Stephen Bartlett, wasn't he, as well? He's a brilliant guy. He's a brilliant guy. He's just tremendous. But I think, hiring in brilliant people and strategizing where you want to be and making yourself accountable as a leader is something that not many leaders will probably openly admit. So I think, and I do think, and I know that you, just Sean in particular, I know obviously talks about it in 2022 a lot around the academy, leaders taking that sort of lead role quite literally on sharing their story on LinkedIn, talking. You don't realize how inspiring it is, and how many people, not just within your business, but externally, aspire to learn from people that have gone through their journey and are happy to share it. So I think there's so much in that final answer that you've just given us that I can't thank you enough. It's just been, as I knew it would be, packed full of content, but packed full of really sensible, practical advice that I think anybody can take from today. So I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
Welcome.
Appreciate that.
And we'll make sure that everything's available if anyone wants to connect. Obviously, we're huge advocates of Hoxo Media Brand Academy. So, get in touch. But thank you for joining us on the Recruitment Podcast.